Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to Counselor's Couch 101. I'm still Jim Stump until further notice. Just kidding, just kidding. A while after the first wave of the pandemic hit, the COVID pandemic, a couple came into my office, and it seems they were ready to kill each other. And I asked what was going on, etc. And they said they'd been too close, they'd been boxed up in their house too long, and they couldn't stand it. They really got on each other's nerves. What happened was the wife was a stay-at-home mom, a homemaker, stay-at-home homemaker. And the husband worked in some sort of a business that had a lot to do with interaction with other people. And so that business shut down at the beginning of COVID, shut completely down. All production was off until further notice, right? So they were cooped up in their house along with two college-age kids, right? And the kids were doing studies from home. The parents were in the house with nothing to do because the husband wasn't working, and they weren't going out even to buy groceries. They would have their groceries sent in. They're going to boxed up and sent left on the front door, right? So after about 3 months of this, they had it. Somehow they'd gotten on each other's nerves, and they were fit to be tied. They were going just stark raving crazy, and they thought they'd have to get a divorce. It was a word that just sort of came up and they sort of discussed casually. They weren't seriously thinking about it, but at the same time, they couldn't stand the pressure they were under, right? And I asked them about their relationship before the COVID shutdown, and they said they were getting along fine. The situation was that the husband was away most of the time. He worked long hours, 10, 12 hours a day. And the wife pretty much had the run of the house when the kids went to school and like that. And so the couple was getting along fine. But when COVID came and everything shut down and they virtually were locked in that box 24/7 for a goodly length of time, they started to get on each other's nerves and the relationship started to come apart. So I said to them, okay, it seems to me like we need a little break here, break from this tension and this closeness that COVID has put on everybody, right? We need to break through that a little bit. So I asked them if they had any place outside of the house they could go. And it turns out the husband could go stay with some relatives of his somewhere. And the wife had a sister who lived in Santa Barbara. These folks lived around Los Angeles where I am. The wife had a sister who lived in Santa Barbara, and that sister was away from home. I don't know if she was traveling or doing something somewhere, but she wasn't there. And so the wife could go stay at her sister's place in Santa Barbara. So that's what they did. They kind of went their separate directions for a while. Now, when the wife went to Santa Barbara, she was kind of bored. Didn't know anybody up there. Her sister wasn't there. The place was empty. She started going around the area, just looking at the sights and taking in the scenery and whatever the Santa Barbara had to offer in the way of activities. She went up to the old mission, and she's just walking the grounds. She wasn't in the buildings or anything because people were still afraid of being in close proximity. She was walking the grounds, and she met a man, approximately her own age, and they were just both walking alone, and they just sort of said hi, and they started talking. And as they chit-chatted, they walked around the grounds together, and they seemed to like each other's company, right? You see where this one's going. So after her visit to the mission had come to an end and she wanted to leave, the gentleman asked her if she wanted to have dinner and like that, and she said, okay, I guess that would be all right. Because at the time, the restaurants, a lot of them, were not seating people inside. Folks were taking the food and they were just eating wherever they could find a spot, right, out along the street. Some places had tables and chairs set up out front of their businesses. So folks are finding ways to eat their meals outside up and down State Street, if any of you know that. Well, this lady, this wife, and her newfound friend ended up spending a week together. They were walking through all the sites. They went to the old churches just to look at the architecture and so forth around Santa Barbara. And they also went to the old movie theaters. If you've ever been to Santa Barbara, they have some unique, very old golden age of Hollywood type movie theaters. So they went to these movie theaters just to check them out and to enjoy the 1930s style of architecture and the opulence of it and all of that sort of thing. As they went along, they apparently grew closer and closer and closer. Now, I don't know that anything physical happened between them. The wife didn't say that it did, but she didn't quite say that it didn't either. And as it turns out, we don't know if the gentleman was married or not as well. His background is a little bit clouded. Not that anybody was trying to lie to one another, but it was a casual meeting. They weren't expecting it to go on anywhere. Well, after they spent this week together, she started to remember what it was like to be a teenager, to be free, to not be in the confines of a marriage. And she was beginning to feel this infatuation for this gentleman, just as if she said, I felt like I was 15 again, and I was free, and I was able to think my own thoughts and live my own life, make my own decisions. And she was really enjoying this meeting with this strange gentleman, a stranger who was a gentleman, and they spent a lot of time together. They met often during the days. They walked around State Street, checked out all the sights. They went down to the pier. They spent time on the pier just looking at the ocean and talking about their lives. She shared her experiences where she grew up and what it was like for her and what she was doing. And apparently he shared his as well. They're just talking and talking and talking the way people do when they're getting to know each other and they're starting a new relationship. They spent hours walking the beach, barefooted along the water and like that, just chatting, keeping a good 5 feet away from each other because that's what they were told to do back in that day, right? Keep your distance, don't breathe in those air. They got to know each other very well. The wife came back to life. I don't know what happened to the gentleman, but the wife came back to life. She's blossomed again like a flower coming out in the springtime. She just came alive. Her face was had new color. Her spirit was revived. Her enthusiasm was showing. She was eager to be alive and doing things in life. She wanted new things and like that. She wanted to live again. But when the time was over for her to head back to her home, she came back and she realized she still wanted to be married to her husband. She wanted her family, she wanted her kids, and she wanted to see her kids get married. She wanted to see the grandchildren grow and like that. But she had a new idea about that relationship, and she knew that if it came to it, she could be free. She could be on her own. She would get along fine, right? And somehow that gave her a new perspective on marriage and their family and so on and so forth. So I don't know that the original couple got all that much closer, but they did stop their feuding. They sort of called a truce. They decided they liked each other once again. As I say, the wife had no intention of leaving the marriage. Apparently, the husband didn't either. After they had discussed it briefly and in passing previously, that idea just sort of dropped away, and she was a new woman. So it brings up a question, at least for me it does. Is it good to take a vacation from marriage? Is it good to leave behind all the marriage responsibilities and promises and all that? Just set it aside for a time and get some time away from that type of a relationship, from the restrictions and the duties and obligations, the sameness of it. Because a lot of our lives, they fall into a pattern, what a lot of people call a rut. We do the same sort of thing each day or each week and each month and each year. Is it good just to chuck all that and to go be free for a little bit and bring a revitalization back to the relationship? Did it harm the relationship? Some other questions I have for you, especially you ladies, but gentlemen as well. As far as I know, the wife did not tell the husband about the gentleman she had met in Santa Barbara, as far as I know. I don't know if they've discussed those things since that time, because this is going back a couple of years. As far as I know, she didn't tell him anything about what she had done there, except she said she walked around, took in the sights, and watched the ocean, etc., and got some food at the restaurants. Now, the husband said a similar thing. He pretty much said he just hung out, got some rest, got some new scenery, and the like, and he wasn't saying anything about anybody he might have met or might not have met. I don't know. What do you think? Is it a good idea for a relationship to take that kind of a break? And if you do take that kind of a break, should you tell your partner if you met someone? Particularly, should you tell your partner if you met someone and some sort of a physical interaction took place? Is that the sort of thing you should tell your partner? Would that be good for the relationship or would it not? I'm just wondering. And I speculate from the go that it probably depends on the couple, right? Depends on how they feel about each other. It depends on how they feel about those things, relationship vows and promises and etc. And how you feel about the person you've been living with for a long time. Is there a spark of affection still there, or is it gone? That would make a difference into whether or not you would be able to discuss that type of a thing. So I'm asking all of you, what do you think? Is it a good idea to take a break from marriage responsibilities every now and then? And if you do, should you share what you've done with your partner? And vice versa. So, should both of the people, to the two individuals in the marriage, should they go off on their own for a period of time? And should they come back and tell their partners about it? Would it hurt the relationship? Would it help the relationship? I'm just curious. It sort of depends on the couple, I think. But that was what was on my mind when I woke up this morning, so I thought I would share that. We'll look forward to your comments down below. Tell me what you think. If you have any lengthy ideas, please send them to me in an email at counselorscouch101@mail.com. counselorscouch101@mail.com. I look forward to reading all of your observations. I've said it many times. I say it again. Counselors learn more from their people than the people learn from the counselors. It's just true. But we can all benefit if we share these ideas. I hope you're all having a wonderful holiday season, getting into the spirit and beginning to enjoy yourselves and not overwork too much, not to overspend and overextend too much. Enjoy the holidays and try to rekindle those relationships that we had that sort of got stuffy after too much time of sameness and so on and so forth, right? Do something unusual this year. Take a different sort of Christmas holiday excursion. Do a new activity. Do something you haven't done. Maybe pick up a new tradition. Do something new to make this year unique from all the others. And then every year do that. Every year do something unique to keep the season alive and your memories and keep your spirit alive in your relationship. Let me know what you think. Should couples take a break? And should they tell all to their partner when they get back home? Very curious to see what you think about that one. Thanks for dropping by, everybody. I look forward to talking with you next time.